In today's webinar, we'll be talking about building Zoho CRM integrations using Zoho Flow. So last month, we went through the logical tools and capabilities in Flow. And this time, we're going to go through some practical use cases specific to Zoho CRM integrations that you can implement in your team right away. Arjun, your host, and we're also joined by our product experts to answer all of your queries as I speak, and to also take up your questions once the session is over. And as always, for more specific queries that are specific to your requirements or your team, you can always reach out to us at support@zohoflow.com, and we'll be there to help you. So some general instructions here. As I proceed, you'll be on mute. But if you have any questions, please do use the questions tab. Um, our experts will help you with those questions. And during the session, we'll also send out a few polls. Please do participate, as it will help us understand the kind of audience we have here, and also to tailor the webinar and the answers for your questions accordingly. And once the session is over, we'll be sending you a recording of this. So here's the agenda for today's session. First, we'll go through a basic introduction to app integration, why app integration is needed, and then we'll go through why CRM integration specifically. Then we'll have a walkthrough of the platform using a simple example, and we'll build a flow from scratch, and then we'll push it live. And the next part, we'll also cover a few more use cases which can be useful in your team or business. Finally, we'll have the question and answer session. So here, we'll send out the first poll question. Please to participate. I'll wait for a few seconds before we get started. Right. So the need for app integration. I think most of you would agree with me when I say that today there's an app for almost any activity that you can think of in a business, right? So let's imagine sending out newsletters or creating support tickets, creating a task, or even hosting a webinar like what we are on right now. So essentially, these apps act like platforms upon which business activities are performed. But that also means that even though these apps could be great by themselves, if data doesn't move between them fast enough or has errors in them, you either slow down your workflows or create issues in them. Effectively, these also create silos in your organization where teams work as separate entities and they are not connected with each other. Let's take an example where you're collecting leads on a spreadsheet. And if you're manually copying and pasting all that into your CRM, you're wasting your time and effort, which you can use for more productive and more important work in your organization. Or you can even use that time to sit back and relax more often. So that's where integration comes into play. And to solve that, a lot of businesses choose to go with having full-time developers writing code and creating integrations from them. So this code could be hundreds or even thousands of lines of code. And these developers need to constantly monitor, manage, and troubleshoot these integrations on a regular basis. Now, that doesn't sound really efficient, right? So a more comprehensive solution for this problem is to have a complete one-stop solution to integrate all your apps and to replicate your workflows exactly the way it functions in your organization. You need a more complete platform like Zoho Flow, where you can integrate your apps and create automations from them. Now, when you think about workflows, one of the more important and effective ways to automate your workflow starts with CRM. Um, if you're a Zoho CRM user, you would know that Zoho CRM is a really capable platform with a host of important capabilities. It also has a numerous inbuilt integrations that comes with it, and also the marketplace integrations that you can choose to use from. However, most of these integrations are either one-to-one app integrations. They connect two apps. For example, let's say Zoho Forms and Zoho CRM. It could be MailChimp and CRM and so on. And they could also sync data between two apps. Some of them even provides bulk import or bulk export capabilities. But by just using these integrations, you are missing out on delegating a lot of manual tasks to a workflow automation. Now, let us take a look at the basics of workflow automation here. All workflows essentially work based on the same concept of trigger and a series of actions that follow the trigger. So a trigger is an event that kickstarts a workflow. For example, in your sales team, if you're in a sales team, you would know that when you receive a lead, there is a series of activities that follow that event, right? Similarly, there is another set of events that would follow if you receive a new deal. So these can be configured as triggers in your workflows. Then you need to add actions such as create task or update a row based on the trigger that you've configured. But trigger and some actions alone cannot make a complete workflow. You'll need conditional branching or delays and other logical capabilities to make your workflows more usable and more practical. I'll take you through some of these capabilities when I explain some use cases later on in the session. So we'll go ahead to the walkthrough of the platform. So before the walkthrough, I would like all of you to tell me if you have ever used Zoho CRM integration, or if you are familiar with Zoho CRM integration. And if so, please do drop in the chat what kind of integrations you use in your business. So first, I'm going to take you through a very simple app-to-app integration between Zoho Forms and Zoho CRM. I've selected this example just to show you the capabilities of the platform and how you can build a simple workflow from scratch. So the example is this. You are collecting data through a web form, and you need to add those details into your Zoho CRM account as leads. Let's see how this is done in Zoho Flow. So before I go into creating this particular flow, let me just introduce you to the platform. So when you log into Zoho Flow, you will be taken to the My Flows page section here. There you can see all the flows and the folders you have in your account. You can also check the dashboard on the left panel here. The dashboard gives you a complete overview of all the flows in your organization, how they are performing, the execution histories, and all that. Now let's go ahead to My Flows. So I'm going to create this flow in a folder. I've created 4 Zoho CRM integrations. So on the right side, you can see that there is a button, it's create. When you click on the button, you have 2 options. You can create a flow or a folder. So in this case, we are going to create a flow. I'm going to name it Zoho Forms to Zoho CRM. The description is optional, so I'm going to just click create. So it's asking me what kind of trigger do I want for this workflow. So if you log into Zoho Flow now, most of you would just get the first 3 triggers. I'm giving you a glimpse into what we are going to have in the very near future. We are going to release 3 new types of triggers. So before I jump into building the workflow, I'll just give you a very brief description about all these triggers, and then we'll move on. So the app trigger is useful when you have an app that's already available in Zoho Flow, and if the trigger and action is also available. The app trigger works based on two mechanisms. One is the polling mechanism, where Zoho Flow will periodically check the app for new updates. And once there is an update, it will kickstart your workflow. The second mechanism is the real time trigger, which is when there is an event that occurs in an app, instantly that will trigger the workflow. Now, the second type of trigger is the schedule trigger. You can just create a one-time or recurring flow from this trigger. You can enter the date and time, and it will keep on repeating if you use a recurring schedule trigger. The third is the webhook trigger. So any online platform or an app that support webhooks, you can use a webhook URL from Zoho Flow and configure it in that app. And whenever there's an update in that app, it will instantly notify Flow and trigger your workflow. Now, these are the new set of triggers that we are going to release. The first is URL trigger. It works similarly to the polling trigger, the polling mechanism in the app trigger, where if you have an API endpoint, a URL to that, you can configure that in this trigger. And when there is an update in that API, it will automatically kickstart your workflow here. And just a note here, the periodic checking of that event is based on your subscription plan. Now, the next one is the email trigger. This is especially useful if you constantly get formatted emails. For example, your Uber receipts or invoices, where emails follow a particular format and only the data in them changes with each email. So you can create templates using those formats in Zoho Flow. And if you use those templates, then whenever you receive a similarly formatted email in your Zoho Flow mailbox, then the trigger automatically extracts the essential details from that email and passes it on to your next steps in the workflow. The last one is the RSS or Atom feed. So if you have an RSS feed URL, for example, like the Lifehacker RSS, then you can get constant updates from all your favorite RSS feeds uh, directly into your workflows. Now, for this particular case between Zoho CRM and Zoho Forms, we need to select the new form entry trigger in Zoho Forms. So I'm going to click on App Trigger. And here we need to search for Zoho Forms. And there it is. I'll click Next. I'll choose the entry submitted trigger. So it's asking for an app connection here. An app connection in Zoho Flow is a permission that you grant Zoho Flow by authorizing your app account. You are basically allowing Zoho Flow to access your account and move the data from that app to the other apps that you have configured in your workflow. So since we already have a connection built over here, I'm going to select it. Now it has automatically fetched all the forms in that account. So in my Zoho Forms account, I have this particular form. So I'm going to select that and click Done. Now we have set up the trigger. Now we need to set up an action, and that is create lead in Zoho CRM. So on the left side, you can see that there is a section here. You have apps and logic. You can search under apps for Zoho CRM. So in Zoho CRM, you would know that there are multiple modules that already come with Zoho CRM, as well as the custom modules that you create in Zoho CRM. So in this case, we want to get the lead. We want to create the lead, a new lead in Zoho CRM. So we are going to drag and drop, create module entry action into this builder. So once I drop it there, it again asks for the connection. This connection is particular for Zoho CRM. So each connection is linked to an app, and you can create any number of connections in your organization. So I'm going to like this connection over here. So the module that I want to select is leads, and I'm going to select this layout. So whatever fields that are there in your leads module will be displayed over here. So let's just map the essential data into this. So here you have made company as a mandatory field. So in that case, we need to get the detail of that company from the form. So I'm going to select the trigger over here. On the right side, you can see there's a section called insert variable, and you can see the trigger over here and all the data points that come from that trigger. So here I'm going to click on this variable company, and it will get mapped to this particular field. Now, to map the last name, I can just click on the field over here and click on the variable called name, last name. Now we can also configure the email because I've also collected the email from the form. And I click here on the email field and click on the variable here. And then it's also mapped there. Now there's an easy way to use these variables even when you're typing out long sentences or even if you are crafting an email. So let's say you want the full name, but we don't have the full name available as a variable. So what do you do then? You know that the full name is just the first name, space, and the last name. So you can just do it in a similar way. You can click on the first name, hit the space bar, and then click on the last name. It will give you the full name. We'll click done. Now we have built a very simple flow. Let's see. Let's see how it works. Now, before I switch on the flow, I'll show you the forms as well as I'll just use the test and debug function here to see if everything is working the way I expected. It's always recommended that before you switch on your flow, you test it properly and you clear out all the errors before pushing it live. So let's test and debug the flow. It will open a new window. It is waiting for a new form entry in that particular form that we have configured in the trigger. So this is the web form that I have created. This is the form. So let's fill in some sample data here. I'm going to select the type of inquiry as general inquiry. Need more info on the new store. Submit. And let's see if Zoho Flow has fetched the information. Yes. So you can see that whatever I have entered in that form is already there in this test window. Now I can proceed and test the flow. And it has already done that. You can click on the input and output tabs over here to see how the data has moved into the other apps. So here it has moved all that data into Zoho CRM. Now that the flow is ready to go, let's switch it on. Awesome. So we'll try it once again and we'll look at Zoho CRM to see if it has already created a new lead. So I'm going to type in Frank Zilker, Zilker.com, company is Zilker, pricing. Now that form is also submitted. Now let's look if that execution has been done. You can check that from the history tab over here in Zoho Flow. Yes, it's completed. Now let's look at Zoho CRM. And you can see that it has created a new lead. Now let's go ahead and see a more elaborate example using the same use case. Now, this use case can be achieved even with inbuilt or marketplace integrations that's easily available for Zoho CRM. However, when you think about workflows, these workflows need to be comprehensive in nature. They should not just connect to apps, but should have logical elements between different steps. So let's just expand this use case into something like this. So the idea is the same here. We are collecting leads through forms and then passing it to Zoho CRM. But we are also going to check if that lead has requested a demo request or an appointment. And in that case, we need to create a new support ticket and also inform the relevant teams that a new appointment request has been made. This is especially useful if you have multiple types of appointments, multiple teams taking care of different functions in a team. For example, taking care of a lead that's coming from a form, from social media, and so on. So now let's see how this can be built in Zoho Flow. So I've already built the flow over here, so I'll just take you through that flow. Let's go to the builder. So the trigger and action, the first action in this workflow is the same. You have the entry submitted trigger, which is the same from the last example, and the create module entry, which creates the lead in Zoho CRM. And here we are adding a new step called decision. So decision is a logical element that's available in the builder to create branches of actions depending on a condition, whether it's satisfied or not. So here in this case, you can just drag and drop this decision from the logic section. On the left side, you will see under flow control, you have decision. You can drag and drop it here under create module entry. And you will be asked to fill out the condition for that decision. In this case, we need to check if the type of inquiry, I'll show you the form again, just in case you have missed it. So here in this form, you have the field called type of inquiry. And let's say you have clicked on appointment request. So that's what I'm talking about. So you need the type of inquiry field here and see if it is an appointment request. So how do we do that as a condition? Just need to click here on the left side, and you can see all the variables that have come from the trigger and the actions before this decision. And from there, I'm going to select type of inquiry here. And then here you need to set the comparison operator for this condition. You have a lot of options to choose from. Here we need to check if this equals appointment request. So we are going to select equals and then write the value over here, which is appointment request. You click on done. Now, whenever this condition is satisfied, then this flow will take this path. And if it is not satisfied, if there are no actions attached to this part of the decision box, then the flow will just stop there. If it is a demo request, then the flow will go down this path and will create a ticket in Zoho Desk based on the email address that you have received from this trigger. And it will also send a message in the relevant Teams channel that a new appointment request is made and that you need to attend to it as soon as possible. Now let's see how that is done. So we have crafted a message that says there's a new appointment request from. You can just map this first name and last name just how we mapped in other fields. You click on the trigger, find the first name, last name, and all the relevant details that you need in the message. So I've also added the email address here from this variable over here. Now let's test this again. In this time, we are going to add a new sample entry with the type of inquiry selected as appointment request. Again, I'll select Frank. This time I'll select someone else then. And now I'm going to select the type of inquiry as appointment request. I want to meet sales manager. I'm going to click submit over here. And let's see what has happened in this flow. I'll again go to the history to check if the execution has been completed. It's showing that it's completed. So let's go into CRM and check again. And it has created ben@silk.com. And now this was an appointment request. So it should also reflect in Zoho Desk. Here it is, appointments request from Ben Zilker. And it should also come as a channel message in Zoho Click Sales channel. So here it is, there's a new appointment request from Ben Zilker. Email address is also given. So this is how easy it is to create workflows and automate them in Zoho Flow. Now, before I move on to the other examples, I want to tell you that you can not only use Zoho apps in this ecosystem, you can use all sorts of third-party applications. We have a huge gallery of 850 plus applications, which has numerous triggers and actions available in them. So we'll move on to a few more practical examples of using Zoho CRM workflows. So the next one I'm going to show you is more of a support automation. So in this one, let's say you have a premium support team in your organization, which takes care of support tickets from higher value deal customers. Now, let's say the criteria that you have set for priority support is that if a support ticket from a high value deal customer is left unattended for, let's say, more than an hour, you need the premium support to instantly take care of that ticket. So you need to escalate that tickets in case the ticket is left open for more than an hour. Now let's see how we do that in Zoho Flow. So I'm going to this flow over here, go to the builder. So this is the flow that I have prepared for you. Here, the trigger is ticket created. So whenever a new ticket is created in Zoho Desk, this workflow will be triggered. And now we need to check if the email address that we have received from that trigger is associated with any contact in Zoho CRM. And we also need to check if that contact has a deal with us, which is over, let's say, $10,000. Now, how do we do that? We need to get the contact ID of that particular email address to check if that deal is already there. For that, we use the fetch module entry here. So I have just renamed the action. This was initially fetch module entry. I can just rename this action to suit the workflow that you're working on. So you can also rename all your actions to make so that it makes sense when you look at it again on a later time. So here we are checking the contact based on the email address that we have received from the trigger. And then we are adding a fetch deal action. The fetch deal action checks if the contact ID that we got from this action is associated with any deal in Zoho CRM. Now here we have added a decision box from logic. And the condition that we have provided for this particular decision is that the deal amount should be greater than $10,000. Now, how do we do that? We can select the field on the left side. You have all the fields from the ticket created trigger, and then we have all the fields from fetch contact and so on. Whatever actions or the trigger that were there before this decision box will be available on this left side field. Now, what we need is the deal amount that we have received from this particular action over here. So we'll just look for the amount. There it is. Now, earlier we used the equals comparison operator. This time we are going to use the greater than operator here to see if this amount is greater than this value. So we just enter the value over there and click done. Now that we have created a new branch to be executed if there is a deal that is higher than $10,000, we also need to check if that ticket is still open after an hour of creating this ticket uh, over here. So how do we do that? We can add a simple action called delay action that is also under logic. You can see it over here. So the delay action lets you delay all the actions that follow the delay action, all the steps that follow it for a particular duration or till a particular date and time. So let's see how we configure that. We go to the delay action, and here we have used 1 hour here. So the duration can be 1 hour, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, 3 days, and so on. And delay until you have to give a particular date. So in this case, because we are waiting for an hour, I've given 1 hour here, and then we'll click done. Now, since this has waited for an hour, now we need to check if the ticket is still open. So how do we get that? We can use the fetch ticket action from Zoho Desk to see if so using the ticket ID that you have received from the trigger, we have used the fetch ticket action. We'll see how it's done. So using ticket ID received from the trigger, which is here, we are checking if the status of that ticket is open. So this action gives you that field, the status. Let's see how the condition is made. So from the fetch ticket, let's scroll down and we will see that under fetch ticket action, all these are variables that you have got from the fetch ticket action. And you can see that the status of the ticket is also available there. So we'll select that. And in this case, we are using the comparison operator as equals open. So if the status is still open, then follow this branch. So this branch, we have attached this action to send a channel message to the premium support team that this ticket has been open for more than an hour and that it needs instant attention. So similarly, we'll configure a high value deal customer needs urgent help in ticket, and we are mapping the ticket ID here. So that will be available to the premium support team. I hope this use case can be very useful for any team that has separate teams for priority support or premium support and so on. So let's move ahead into one more example. So in this example, I'm going to give you a very simple workflow idea. Here we are going to uh, help the sales team track their deals better. So whenever a deal is created, and later on in that stage, there will be a stage where the deal will be considered as the implementation stage, right? So let's say you want to create tasks when a particular deal has reached its implementation stage. So you might have a separate team for implementations, or you need to notify your sales team that hey, this deal has reached the implementation stage, and you can start working on it. So how do we do that? We need to create a task in a task management platform like Zoho Projects. And you also need to send a notification to the team in a chat application like Zoho Click. So let's see how this one is done in Zoho Flow. Let's go to the builder. And here you have the updated deal trigger. So whenever a deal, the information in the deal is updated or modified, this workflow will be triggered. And we are using a decision again here with the condition checking if the stage of that particular deal equals implementation. So this, when this condition is satisfied, it will take this branch over here that leads to create task in Zoho projects and message in channel. So all the information that we received from this deal will be mapped accordingly in both these actions, and we have a complete workflow over here. So this is another example of how you can use logical tools to, to make your workflows more real world like. Now, there's also another example that I want to take you through. So this one is, I'm just going to give you a very brief introduction to custom functions in Zoho Flow and how you can use custom functions to, to make your workflows more comprehensive and more real world like. So you would know that in Zoho Flow, the custom functions refers to the code that you can write if you want to make your flows more flexible, or if you want to perform a calculation, if you want to format date, if you want to invoke a URL, all these can be done using code also in Zoho Flow. So there is a space, there is a possibility for you to make your workflows your own. So let's see how we can use custom functions for this particular use case. So I'm just going to use the same idea from our first example of collecting leads from forms and adding them as leads in Zoho CRM. But here we are also going to send the responder an email saying that, hey, you have created an appointment request. We are acknowledging that, and it's just X number of days away from now. So we need to get the number of days that is remaining from the date of submitting this form to the date of appointment. So how do we do that? We need to calculate the number of days for each workflow, each execution here. So we are using a custom function. The custom function is also available under logic. You can see custom functions over here. If you are new to Zoho Flow, you can create a new function by clicking the plus custom function here. So we have already created a couple of custom functions for this one. The language used for custom functions in Flow is Deluge, which is very easy to learn language, and it's very powerful also. So in this case, we need both the dates. So we need 2 dates here to make this calculation. We need the date of the submission of the form as well as the date of appointment. Now to compare 2 dates, those 2 dates should be on the same format. So we are using a current date formatter function here to convert both the dates. So in this one, the first date is today's date of the execution. So where do we get that? Again, from the insert variable section over here, you will see that there are two variables, the current date and current date time. So we can just enter the current date into this custom function, and it will convert that date into a common format that is similar to the one coming from Zoho CRM or Zoho Forms. So in the second custom function over here, we are entering the date from the form, the appointment date. Now, there's another function created that checks the number of days between these two dates. So you enter both these days into this custom function, date 1 and date 2, and the output will be the number of days. Now let's see this flow in action. Let's see if it actually works. So for that, I'm going to fill in this web form over here. I'm going to fill in Frank Zilker again. Email. And today's date is 15th, so I'm going to select 17th. So we should ideally get 2 days there. Submit. And let's see if we have got an email in Zoho Mail. And here it is. Hello, Frank, you have an appointment due on 17 November. That's only 2 days away. Regards, Team Site Silker. So you see the power of adding all these logical elements into your workflow. The customizations that you can do with this is practically limitless. And these examples that I have just showed you is just a tip of the iceberg when it comes to building workflows using Zoho Flow. There are plenty more to automate and numerous capabilities that are still, we have not talked about them, but we'll be covering all those in our upcoming webinars. So we'll also go to two more polls now, and we'll have the question and answer session. So I think this webinar has been of use to you, and I think you have had something to take away from this webinar. So if you like the webinar, please do participate in the polls. We'll have a couple of them coming up. And yeah, thank you for listening. Have a nice day.